The alarm screamed through Kepler Station like the cry of a dying animal. Commander Lyra Vasquez jumped from her chair and ran to the control room. Her boots echoed against the metal floor as she pushed past confused officers and frightened technicians. "What is it?" she demanded. Lieutenant Torres pointed at the screen with a shaking hand. "A ship, Commander. It just appeared out of nowhere. No jump gate, no warning. It's just there." Lyra looked at the screen and felt her blood turn cold. The ship was old. Very old. Its design belonged to another age, another time when humans were still young in space. But what made her heart stop was the name painted on its hull: Prometheus Rising. "That's impossible," she whispered. "That ship vanished 300 years ago." Everyone in the control room knew the story. The Prometheus Rising was a legend, a ghost story that parents told their children. It was the ship that flew beyond the outer veil, the forbidden region of space that the Galactic Empire had declared off-limits to all species. The ship never came back. Its crew of 2,400 humans became names on a memorial wall. Nothing more than a sad chapter in human history. But now the ship was here, floating silently in the darkness of space, waiting. "They're sending a message," Torres said. "Old frequency. Very old. It's a distress call." Lyra took a deep breath. "Open a channel." Static filled the room. Then a voice broke through. It was calm, steady, and very human. "This is Captain Marcus Chun of the exploration vessel Prometheus Rising. We request permission to dock at Kepler Station. We have important information for Earth's government. Please respond." The room fell silent. Lyra felt the eyes of every officer on her. She was the ranking human commander at this station, a place she shared with dozens of alien species loyal to the Galactic Empire. Whatever she did next would change everything. "Captain Chun," she said slowly, "you have been missing for 300 years. Where have you been?" The voice paused. "Beyond the veil, Commander. And we have brought something back. Something that the galaxy needs to know." Before Lyra could respond, another voice cut into the channel. It was deep, clicking, and filled with authority. "This is Councilor Vree of the Zethkai Oversight Council. The vessel Prometheus Rising has violated the sacred boundary established by Imperial law. You will surrender your ship and crew immediately for questioning." Lyra turned to see the counselor entering the control room. Vree was tall, even for a Zethkai. His insect-like body towered over the humans, and his forearms were folded across his chest in a gesture of cold command. His compound eyes reflected the light of the screens, showing no emotion, no mercy. "Counselor," Lyra said carefully, "these are human citizens. They have the right to—" "They have no rights," Vree interrupted. "They crossed into forbidden space. They belong to the Empire now." Captain Chun's voice came through the speakers again. "We will not surrender. We carry information meant for human ears first. This is our right under the Treaty of Soul." Vree made a sound like grinding stones. "The Treaty of Soul does not protect criminals." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Lyra looked at the screen, at the ancient ship floating in the void, and made her decision. "Captain Chun, you have permission to dock at Bay 7. I will meet you personally." Vree's eyes fixed on her with cold fury. "You do not have the authority to—" "I have authority over human vessels at this station," Lyra said, meeting his gaze. "That ship is human. Those people are human. They dock." For a long moment, the counselor said nothing. Then he turned and walked out of the room, his steps heavy with unspoken threats. Lyra let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Torres, get a security team to Bay 7 and contact Earth. Tell them a ghost has come home." An hour later, Lyra stood at the docking bay as the massive doors opened. The Prometheus Rising was even more impressive up close. Its hull was covered in strange marks, not damage, but something else. Patterns that seemed to shift and move when you looked at them too long. The airlock hissed open, and Captain Marcus Chun stepped out. He was a tall man with gray eyes and black hair touched with silver. He wore the old uniform of Earth's exploration fleet, a design that hadn't been used in centuries. But his face was young, too young. He looked no older than 40, even though he should have been dust and bones long ago. Behind him came his crew, men and women of all ages, all wearing the same ancient uniforms, all carrying small devices that glowed with soft blue light. They moved with purpose, with confidence, with the calm of people who had seen things beyond imagination. "Commander Vasquez," Chun said, extending his hand. "Thank you for letting us dock." Lyra shook his hand. It was warm, solid, real. "Captain Chun, I have about 1,000 questions." Chun smiled, but there was sadness in his eyes. "I know, and I will answer them all. But not here. Not with Imperial ears listening." He glanced at the security cameras, at the shadows where Zeth-Kai observers surely waited. "We must speak with Earth's leaders directly. What we carry, it changes everything. What did you find out there?" Lyra asked. "Beyond the veil?" Chun was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "We found the truth, Commander. The truth about who built this galaxy. The truth about why the Empire exists. And the truth about why they never wanted anyone to go beyond the veil." He paused. "The ruling species of this empire have been lying to everyone for 100,000 years. And we have proof." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "Proof of what?" Chun looked at her with those gray eyes, eyes that had seen centuries pass in the darkness between stars. Proof that humanity was never meant to be a servant race. Proof that the technology the Empire uses, the jump gates, the weapons, the shields, was never theirs to control. And proof that we now have the power to end their rule forever. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small device. It was simple, no larger than his palm, but it seemed to hold its own light, its own gravity. "This is the key," Chun said. "And before this is over, every species in the galaxy will have to choose, remain slaves to a lie, or fight for the truth." Lyra stared at the device, at the man who held it, at the crew who had traveled beyond the edge of known space and returned with the power to break an empire. "What do you need from me?" she asked. Chun's smile was grim. "A ship to Earth, and your trust." Lyra thought of her duty to the Empire, her career, her safety. Then she thought of her people, her species, her home. "You have both," she said. The Global Assembly Hall on Earth was the largest building ever constructed by human hands. Its dome stretched toward the sky like a prayer, and its walls held the flags of every nation that had ever existed. Today, those walls held something else. Fear. Captain Marcus Chun stood at the center of the great chamber, surrounded by the leaders of humanity. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, and scientists filled every seat. Outside, Imperial warships had begun to gather in orbit, their weapons pointed at the blue planet below. Time was running out. 300 years ago, Chun began, his voice calm and clear. "My ship crossed the outer veil. We were explorers. We were curious. We wanted to know what the Empire was so afraid of." He paused, looking at the faces around him. Some were suspicious. Some were scared. All were listening. What we found changed everything we thought we knew about the galaxy. He pressed a button on the small device in his hand, and a hologram appeared above his head. It showed a star map, vast and beautiful, with millions of points of light. "This is the known galaxy. Thousands of species. Millions of worlds. All connected by jump gates, all powered by technology that no one truly understands." He moved his hand and the map shifted, And this is what lies beyond the veil. The hologram changed. Instead of empty space, it showed structures, massive, impossible structures that floated in the darkness like sleeping giants. They were beautiful and terrifying, covered in the same shifting patterns that marked the hull of the Prometheus Rising. The architects, Chun said. The species that built everything. The jump gates. The power cores. The weapons. Every piece of advanced technology in this galaxy came from them. They seeded life across the stars 1,000,000 years ago, and then they vanished. A murmur ran through the assembly. Everyone knew the legend of the architects. They were the gods of galactic civilization, the mysterious creators whose technology made everything possible. But they were supposed to be extinct, gone, nothing but dust and memory. They are not dead, Chung continued. They transcended. They uploaded their minds into a network hidden in subspace, a dimension that exists alongside our own. They are still there, watching, waiting. President Amara Okonkwo of the United Earth Council leaned forward. If the architects are still alive, why haven't they contacted us? Why hide? Chun's expression grew dark. Because the Empire's ruling species, the Zethkai, the Vorn, the Ashani, they knew. They have always known. And they have spent 100,000 years making sure no one else would find out. The hologram changed again. Now it showed documents, records, ancient files written in languages that predated human civilization. The Triumvirate built their power on architect technology. But they never learned how it worked. They could use it, copy it, but never improve it. They became dependent on machines they did not understand. Chun's voice hardened. And they realized that if any other species learned the truth, learned how to actually understand and improve this technology, their empire would fall. So they created the Veil, said General Morrison, the commander of Earth's defense forces. They made the architect homeworld forbiddance. Exactly. Chun nodded. They told everyone that the region was dangerous, full of radiation and black holes. They wrote laws, making it illegal to cross. They destroyed any ship that got too close, all to protect their secret. He held up the small device again. It glowed with soft light, pulsing like a heartbeat. But the architects left something behind. A failsafe. A key that can deactivate every piece of architect technology in the galaxy at once. One signal, and every jump gate, every weapon, every power core shuts down. The room erupted in chaos. Leaders shouted questions. Military officers argued with scientists. The implications were too large to comprehend. Chun raised his hand for silence. I know what you're thinking. If we use this key, we destroy the Empire. But we also destroy ourselves. Our ships use architect technology too. Without it, we would be stranded, helpless. Then why bring it here? President Okonkwo asked. Why give us a weapon we cannot use? Chum smiled for the first time. It was the smile of a man who had spent 3 centuries learning secrets that others could barely imagine. Because the key is not the only thing we brought back. He gestured to his officers, who stepped forward carrying cases. They opened them to reveal devices, documents, and glowing crystals that hummed with energy. We spent 300 years beyond the Veil, Chun said. We found the architect libraries. We studied their science. We learned their engineering. And we discovered something amazing. He picked up one of the crystals and held it up to the light. Humans can do something that no other species in this galaxy can do. We can adapt. We can learn. We can take what exists and make it better. He set the crystal down. The architects noticed this about us. In their records, they called humanity the inheritors. They believed we had the potential to surpass even them. General Morrison stood up. Are you saying we can improve on architect technology? I'm saying we already have. Chun pointed to the cases. These are blueprints for ships that don't need architect power cores, weapons that bypass architect shields, engines that work on principles the Empire has never seen. My engineers spent 3 centuries developing them. The room fell silent. The weight of what Chun was saying slowly settled on every mind. The Empire has thousands of warships, President Okonkwo said quietly. Even with new technology, we are only one planet. Yes, Chun agreed. But we have something they don't. We have choice. We can use the key to destroy their power, then use our own technology to rebuild. Or we can fight them with weapons they cannot understand, then offer the key as proof that their age of control is over. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every leader, every general, every scientist. The triumvirate will come for us. They are probably preparing their fleets right now. They will demand we surrender the key, and when we refuse, they will try to destroy us. His voice grew strong. But humanity has faced extinction before. We have survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters that should have ended us. We are still here. President Okonkwo stood. She was a small woman, but in that moment, she seemed to fill the entire room. What do you recommend, Captain? Chun met her gaze. I recommend we fight. Not just for ourselves, but for every species in this galaxy that has been lied to, controlled, and oppressed. We shared the truth. We shared the technology. And we show the Empire that humanity will not bow. The room was silent for a long moment. Then, one by one, the leaders of Earth began to nod. General Morrison turned to his officers. Begin mobilization. Call back every ship. We're going to war. President Okonkwo looked at Chun. And the key? When do we use it? Chun placed the device back in his coat. Only as a last resort. Only when there is no other choice. He paused. But when that moment comes, I will not hesitate. Outside, the Imperial fleet continued to gather. The storm was coming. The ultimatum came 3 days later. Council of Ray stood in the center of a holographic projection that filled Earth's communication center. Behind him, the full might of the Imperial fleet stretched across the screen. Thousands of ships, each one larger than anything humanity had ever built. Dreadnoughts the size of cities. Carriers filled with fighters. Destroyers with weapons that could crack a planet in half. You have 12 hours, Ree said, his clicking voice echoing through the chamber. Surrender the key. Surrender the crew of the Prometheus Rising. Surrender, and the Empire may show mercy. President Okonkwo stood before the projection, her hands clasped behind her back. And if we refuse? Reese's compound eyes gleamed. Then Earth will burn. Your species will be scattered to the far corners of the galaxy as slaves. Your history will be erased. Your name will be forgotten. He leaned forward. This is not a threat, President. This is a promise. The projection flickered and died. Silence filled the room. General Morrison was the first to speak. How many ships do we have? 312, his aide replied. Most are defense vessels. Only 40 are true warships, against thousands. Morrison's jaw tightened. Those aren't good odds. Captain Chun stepped forward. The odds don't matter. What matters is what we do with what we have. Over the next 12 hours, humanity prepared for war. In the shipyards of Mars. Engineers worked without sleep to install the new technology from the Prometheus Rising. The blueprints Chun had brought were revolutionary. Power cores that ran on quantum fluctuations instead of architect crystals. Shields that bent space itself to deflect attacks. Weapons that fired pulses of compressed gravity, capable of crushing anything in their path. There wasn't time to build new ships, but there was time to upgrade the old ones. Commander Lyra Vasquez arrived at Earth's main space station. just as the last modifications were being completed. She had left Kepler Station behind, abandoning her post in the Imperial fleet. There would be no going back now. "You're really doing this," she said to Chun as they walked through the busy corridors. "You're really going to fight the entire Empire?" Chun nodded. "We don't have a choice. They won't stop until they have the key. And if they get it, they'll use it to ensure no one ever challenges them again." Lyra looked out a window at the fleet gathering around Earth. The ships were small compared to Imperial vessels, but they moved with purpose. Pilots ran to their fighters. Crews loaded ammunition. Everyone knew what was coming. "I spent my whole career serving the Empire," Lyra said quietly. "I believed in it. I thought we were part of something greater." She turned to Chun. "Was any of it real?" Chun considered the question. The Empire gave the galaxy order, stability, peace of a kind. But it was built on lies and fear. The question isn't whether it was real, it's whether it was right. Before Lyra could respond, an alarm cut through the station. "They're here," someone shouted. "The Imperial fleet is jumping in." Chun and Lyra ran to the command center. Through the massive windows, they could see it happening, flashes of light as hundreds of ships emerged from jump gates around the solar system. The darkness of space filled with metal and fire. "All ships, this is Admiral Zhang," a voice crackled over the communication system. "Form defensive positions around Earth. Protect the planet at all costs." Humanity's fleet moved into position. 300 ships against 3,000. It should have been a massacre, but it wasn't. The 1st Imperial Squadron, a group of 50 destroyers, moved toward Earth with arrogant confidence. They had fought 1,000 battles and never lost. Their weapons were the finest in the galaxy. Their crews were trained from birth for war. They didn't stand a chance. The human ships flickered. There was no other word for it. One moment they were there, the next they were somewhere else, moving through space in ways that should have been impossible. The new engines Chen had brought didn't just move ships faster. They let them slip through folds in space itself. The Imperial destroyers fired. Their weapons were powerful enough to destroy mountains. But the human ships weren't where they seemed to be. The shots passed through empty space while the real vessels appeared behind the attackers. Then the humans fired back. The gravity weapons hit the destroyers like fists from an angry god. Shields designed to stop lasers and missiles couldn't stop the crush of compressed space. Hull plating crumpled. Engines exploded. In 60 seconds, all 50 destroyers were dead. Across the battlefield, the Imperial fleet hesitated. This wasn't supposed to happen. Humans were a young species, barely worth notice. They shouldn't have weapons like this. They shouldn't be able to fight like this. But they were. On the Imperial flagship, Counselor Vree watched the battle with growing horror. His tactical officers shouted reports that made no sense. Human ships appearing and disappearing. Imperial weapons doing nothing. Entire squadrons destroyed in moments. How? Vree demanded. How is this possible? No one had an answer. The battle raged for hours. The Empire threw everything it had at Earth. Wave after wave of ships poured through the jump gates, determined to crush the human resistance through sheer numbers. And slowly, painfully, they began to make progress. Human ships were better, but there were so few of them. For every Imperial vessel destroyed, 2 more took its place. The human fleet was pushed back toward Earth itself. On the command ship, Admiral Zhang looked at the tactical display with grim eyes. "We can't hold much longer. There are too many of them." Chum stood beside him, watching the lights on the display flicker and die, each one a ship. Each ship a crew, each crew a family that would never go home. "Then it's time," Chum said. He pulled out a communication device and switched it to broadcast on every frequency in the galaxy. This is Captain Marcus Chun of the Prometheus Rising. I am speaking to every species in the Galactic Empire. I am speaking to every slave, every servant, every planet that has lived under the Triumvirate's control. The battle paused. Ships stopped firing. Across 1,000 worlds, beings of every shape and size looked up at screens and listened. You have been lied to, Chung continued. The architects are not dead. The technology you depend on was never meant to be controlled by a few. The empire was built on fear and deception. He took a breath. I have proof. I have the key that the Triumvirate has feared for 100,000 years. And I am offering you a choice. He looked at the stars, at the fleets, at the infinite darkness of space. Stand with humanity. Fight for the truth. And together, we will build a galaxy where knowledge is shared, not hoarded. Where power comes from creation, not control. His voice hardened. Or stay with the Empire and remain slaves to a lie forever. The message ended. The silence stretched across light years. Then, one by one, voices began to respond. From the mining colonies of the Dorvani, we stand with humanity. From the warrior holds of the Kethra, we remember our honor. We fight. From 100 worlds, 100 species, 100 voices that have been silent for too long. We are with you. The rebellion had begun. The galaxy burned out in the 3 months since Chun's broadcast. The war had spread to every corner of known space. What began as a battle for Earth had become something much larger, a revolution that set fire to 100,000 years of imperial control. On the mining world of Dorvan Prime, the insectoid Dorvani rose against their masters. For centuries, they had worked in the deep tunnels, pulling precious metals from the rock to feed the Empire's endless hunger. Now they turned their mining lasers into weapons and their cargo ships into warships. The Imperial garrison fell in a single night. On the frozen plains of Kethra, the great warriors remembered their past. Long ago, they had been conquerors, proud and free. The Empire had broken them, turned them into servants and bodyguards for wealthy aliens. Now they picked up their ancient blades and remembered what it meant to fight for themselves. On 100 other worlds, the story was the same. Species that had accepted their place in the Empire's order suddenly saw another path. Chem's message had given them something they had lost long ago. Hope. But hope alone could not win a war. Commander Lyra Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Prometheus Rising, watching the tactical display with tired eyes. The human fleet had grown since the Battle of Earth. Rebel ships from a dozen species had joined them, forming a ragged alliance that somehow held together through sheer determination. It wasn't enough. Report, she said to her tactical officer. The Empire has gathered its remaining loyal fleets at the Zethkai homeworld, he replied. Over 10,000 ships. It's the largest force ever assembled in galactic history. Lyra closed her eyes. 10,000 ships. The Rebel Alliance had maybe 2,000, counting everything that could fly and fight. The math was simple and terrible. Captain Chun entered the bridge. He looked older now, worn down by months of battle and death. But his eyes still held that strange fire, the fire of a man who had seen beyond the edge of known space and returned with purpose. The Triumvirate has issued a new ultimatum, he said. They're offering amnesty to any species that abandons the rebellion. Return to the Empire, and they will forgive. Continue to fight, and they will show no mercy. Will anyone take the offer? Lyra asked. Chun shook his head. Not after what we showed them. The rebels have seen the truth now. They know what the Empire really is. You can't unsee that. Lyra thought about her own journey. 3 months ago, she had been a loyal Imperial officer, proud of her uniform and her duty. Now she commanded the most wanted ship in the galaxy, fighting against everything she had once believed in. What do we do? She asked. We can't win a straight battle. Not against 10,000 ships. Chum walked to the main window and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Imperial fleet was preparing for its final assault. Somewhere out there, the fate of the galaxy was being decided. We don't fight them head-on, he said finally. We make them come to us. We choose the ground. We make them pay for every step. The plan was simple in concept, impossible in execution. The rebel fleet would fall back to a nebula called the Burning Veil, a region of space, filled with radiation and electromagnetic storms. Normal ships couldn't operate there. The sensors would be blind, and the weapons would be unreliable. But the rebel ships weren't normal anymore. Over the past 3 months, human engineers had worked with Dovani mechanics and Kethra warriors to upgrade every ship in the Alliance. The technology from the Prometheus Rising had been shared freely, taught to anyone willing to learn. Now the rebel fleet had vessels that could survive in the nebula's chaos. While Imperial ships stumbled blind, thought it was their only chance. 2 weeks later, the Imperial fleet arrived. Council of Ray stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the burning veil swirl and writhe before him. It was beautiful in a terrible way, clouds of glowing gas that could strip a ship's shields in minutes. Lightning storms that could fry electronics. Gravity pockets that could crush a vessel like paper. They're in there, his tactical officer reported. The rebel fleet. All of them. Reese's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. They've trapped themselves. The fools. Sir, our ships will have difficulty operating in that environment. Our sensors will be blind, Ree finished. As will theirs. But we have numbers. We have power. We will flood the nebula with ships and crush them through sheer force. He turned to his communications officer. Signal all ships. Enter the burning veil. Find the rebels. Destroy them. The Imperial fleet moved forward. 10,000 ships, the pride of a 100,000-year empire, plunged into the chaos dot, and the rebels were waiting. The first Imperial ships emerged from a particularly dense cloud to find themselves surrounded. Rebel vessels appeared from nowhere, their strange engines allowing them to slip through the nebula's dangers, while Imperial sensors showed nothing. Fire erupted from every direction. Contact? We have contact on Sector 7. Sector 12. They're everywhere. Our shields are failing. The radiation. The Imperial fleet fell into chaos. Commanders couldn't see their own ships. Orders were lost in static. Ships crashed into each other in the blinding clouds, or wandered into gravity pockets that tore them apart. And through it all, the rebels fought. Lyra commanded the Prometheus Rising with cold precision, leading strike teams against Imperial carriers twice her size. The Dovani mining ships used their drilling lasers to cut through battleship armor. The Kethra warriors boarded enemy vessels and fought hand-to-hand through the corridors. God, it was brutal. It was bloody. Both sides lost ships by the hundred, but the rebels were winning. On the Eternal Dominion, Ree watched his empire crumble. The tactical display showed nothing but static and death. His fleet was being torn apart, and he couldn't even see the enemy doing it. Sir, his officer said, voice trembling, we've lost over 3,000 ships. The fleet is breaking apart. Ree felt something he had never felt before. Fear. For the first time in his long life, he understood that he might lose. That the empire might actually fall. No, he said. No, I will not allow this. He turned to his communications officer. Signal the triumvirate. Tell them we need the weapon. The officer went pale. Sir, the planet killer? They said it was only for emergencies. This is an emergency. Ree screamed. Tell them to fire it at the nebula. Destroy everything. If we cannot have victory, then no one will. The message went out. Across the galaxy, at the heart of Imperial space. The Triumvirate received the request, and they agreed. Deep in the Zethkai homeworld, a weapon that had not been fired in 50,000 years began to wake. It was old, older than the Empire itself, built by the architects for a war that history had forgotten. It had the power to destroy not just ships, but entire regions of space, to wipe the burning veil from existence and everything in it. On the Prometheus rising, Chun felt something change. A cold certainty settled in his gut. He didn't know what the Empire was planning, but he knew it would be terrible. "Lyra," he said quietly, "it's time." She looked at him, understanding in her eyes. "The key?" He pulled out the small device, the weight of 100,000 years resting in his palm. "The key." The weapon fired. A beam of pure destruction shot across the galaxy, moving faster than light, faster than thought. It was ancient, unstoppable, designed by beings who had lived when stars were young. Its target was the burning veil and everything inside it. 2,000 rebel ships, millions of fighters, every hope the revolution had left. Captain Chun saw it coming on the sensors. A wave of death, seconds away. He didn't hesitate. The key was already in his hand. It had been waiting for 3 centuries, ever since he had found it in the silent halls of the Architect Archives. It had been waiting for this moment, for this choice, for a species brave enough or desperate enough to use it. Chun pressed his thumb against the smooth surface and spoke the word the architects had left for him: awaken. The key glowed, not with light, but with something deeper, a pulse that spread outward through space itself. It moved faster than the weapon, faster than light, faster than anything Chun could have imagined. In a single heartbeat, it touched every piece of architect technology in the galaxy. And everything stopped. The planet killer's beam flickered and died, its ancient systems shutting down mid-firing. The Imperial ships went dark, their engines silenced, their weapons cold. Across the galaxy, jump gates collapsed into dead metal. Power cores that had burned for millennia cooled into silence. On 10,000 worlds, lights went out, but the rebel ships stopped too. Lyra looked around the bridge of the Prometheus rising as the lights died. Emergency power kicked in weak, battery-based, enough to breathe, but not enough to move. "We're dead in the water," her officer reported. "All systems are down. The quantum cores, the fold drives, everything that came from architect tech is gone." Through the windows, Lyra could see the nebula around them. Thousands of ships, Imperial and Rebel alike, floated in the darkness like leaves on a still pond. No one was moving. No one was fighting. The war was over. But so, it seemed, was everything else. In the silence, Chun opened a communication channel. His voice was weak, powered only by emergency batteries, but it reached every ship in the nebula. "All crews, this is Captain Chun. I know you're scared. I know you're wondering what happens now." He paused. "What happens now as we show the galaxy what humanity can do?" He turned to his engineering chief, a woman named Sarah Park, who had been with him since the Prometheus rising first crossed the veil. "Are the backup systems ready?" Park nodded. "Chemical rockets, nuclear pulse drives, solar sails. It's primitive, but it works." Chun smiled. "Then let's show them primitive." It took 30 minutes. While Imperial ships drifted helplessly, the human vessels began to move. Engines that didn't depend on architect technology roared to life. Rocket fire lit up the darkness. Slowly, clumsily, but surely, the human ships began to fly again. The Dorvani learned next. Human engineers talked them through emergency modifications, helping them convert their mining equipment into makeshift propulsion. Within an hour, Dorvani ships were moving too, then the Kethra, then the others. Species that had never built anything without architect technology suddenly found themselves learning to create. to adapt, to survive without the crutch they had depended on for so long, on the eternal dominion. Counselor Vree watched in horrified disbelief. His flagship was dead, no power, no weapons, no hope. And out there, in the darkness of the nebula, the rebels were moving while his fleet sat helpless. A human shuttle docked with the Eternal Dominion 2 hours later. Vree was waiting in the command center, surrounded by guards who held weapons that no longer worked. Captain Chun stepped through the airlock, alone and unarmed. "You've killed us all," Vree said, his voice shaking with rage. "Without the architect technology, civilization will collapse. Billions will die." Chun met his gaze without flinching. Billions were already dying. Under your rule, under your lies, under your control. He stepped closer. "The difference is, now they have a chance to build something better." "Better?" Vree laughed, a bitter clicking sound. "You've thrown the galaxy into chaos. You've destroyed everything our ancestors built." "Your ancestors didn't build anything," Chun said calmly. "They found technology they didn't understand and used it to enslave everyone else. That's not civilization. That's just a different kind of prison." He pulled out a data chip and set it on the console between them. "This contains everything we learned beyond the veil. How to build new power sources, new engines, new weapons, technology that doesn't depend on the architects, that any species can understand and improve." Chun's voice softened. "I'm giving it to you. To everyone. Freely." Vree stared at the chip like it was a poisonous animal. "Why? We tried to destroy you." "Because that's what humans do," Chun said. "We learn. We adapt. We share. It's not about revenge, Counselor. It's about making sure the next civilization is better than the last one." The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The Empire had fallen. The Triumvirate had surrendered. And humanity, strange, young, impossible humanity, was offering to teach everyone how to survive in the new world they had created. Not everyone accepted at first. Some species retreated to their worlds, angry and afraid. Some blamed humanity for the chaos. Some tried to hoard what little architect technology still worked, hoping to rebuild the old order. But most, eventually, came to learn. 6 months after the Battle of the Burning Veil, the first meeting of the new Galactic Council was held on Earth. Representatives from 200 species gathered in the same hall where Chun had first revealed the truth. They came not as servants or masters, but as equals partners in building something new. President Okonkwo welcomed them with tears in her eyes. "We didn't want a war," she said. "We didn't want to break the old order. But sometimes the old must fall so the new can grow." She looked at the faces around her, so many different shapes, so many different colors, so many different histories. "Today, we start again, together." Chun watched from the back of the room as the speeches continued. He was tired, more tired than he had ever been. 3 centuries of traveling. Months of war. The weight of changing a galaxy rested on his shoulders, and he felt every gram of it. A small hand tugged at his sleeve. He looked down to see a Dorvani child, no bigger than a human toddler, staring up at him with wide eyes. "Are you the human who found the key?" the child asked. Chun smiled and knelt down to her level. "I am. Is it true what they say? That humans went beyond the stars and came back with magic?" Chun chuckled. "Not magic. Just knowledge. And determination." The child tilted her head. "Will you teach us?" Chun looked at her, really looked at her. She was the future. All of these beings were the future. A galaxy reborn, starting over with nothing but their minds and their will. "Yes," he said. "That's why we came home." Through the great windows of the assembly hall, the sun was setting over Earth, but in the darkness of space, new lights were beginning to shine, ships moving without architect technology, stations being built with new materials. civilizations learning to walk on their own for the first time in 100,000 years. The old galaxy was dead. The new one was just beginning, and humanity would be there to guide it.